Good morning. We're about to get started. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I miss you too, Shawan. I'm so happy to be back on with y'all today. What's I gonna say? Next week we'll be back on Thursdays. I had meetings yesterday, so that JOB comes first. Let me turn down or turn off my ringer. So those text messages. But everybody watched the first video, right? Make sure, And if you didn't watch the first one, it's okay. Good morning, everyone on YouTube. Good morning. Good morning. I'm trying to situate I don't want to just talk to YouTube and then I just don't want to talk to TikTok either. So let's see if I can arrange it where I'm looking at both of y'all. Okay. So good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Y'all know I open up, give it about 10 minutes for folks to come in. So if you have questions, this is a great time to ask them. I need another chair. In fact, I think I'm about to move to my table because this stool gonna get uncomfortable after a while. Or maybe I'll just get up and walk around every few minutes. Good morning. Lord, I did not change that thing. Can I change it? Ugh, I can't. I can edit it. Uh-oh, I can edit. All right. All right. What time is it? Let me turn on this my oven time is wrong because the electricity went out in the neighborhood yesterday because somebody hit a transformer and I didn't reset it. Oh, MacBook. What time is it? 10:03. So we got about 6 or 7 minutes. So if you don't have your notebook, because I don't have my notebook, if you don't have your notebook, you don't have your pen, grab that, and I'm gonna grab mine. Okay. Now I am prepared fully, and hopefully you are as well. Hopefully you got your water next to you. I got my water next to me. I got my pen. I got my notebook. Come on in the room. So what questions y'all have? What's going on? Please share. And if you have friends you want to join, share it with them. Langston, you can always play the replay on our YouTube page. So the link to the YouTube is in or on my page. So you can always go to the YouTube. And you know what? I've been terrible. Wednesday night after I cooked dinner, I fell asleep and I was supposed to send emails. Please blame my head, not my heart. Oh my gosh, that is so not like me. But I was tired, y'all. I mean, by 8:30. I remember turning on Paradise to start that new series. Baby, that series was watching me. I woke up around 4 a.m. yesterday. It just got started with my day. So I was tired Wednesday. So my apologies for not sending that email. If you were looking for that email, I do apologize. I'm about to send it right now, though. Oops. Especially since we have about 4.5 minutes before our actual start time. So that's something I want to share with you. Whatever the posted time is, we're going to start 10 minutes later. Okay. That way it gives people time to jump on. Lady Libra, I did watch episode 1 yesterday once the electricity came back on. I did watch episode 1, but I came home from work yesterday. I was home maybe 15, 20 minutes. Then all of a sudden the lights blinked. And I'm like, I know we didn't just lose power. And then all the neighborhood apps start going off with people talking about the electricity, but they got it back up and running relatively quickly. So I am pleased about that. All right. User 743-614-1999-1847. I need you to get a name. But I understand you're at work. So if you do get too busy, just hop on over to the YouTube. All right. Gilda said she read all the articles and she doesn't have any questions at the moment. Thank you to everyone who is joining via YouTube. Music lover, yes, please sign up. Go ahead and do it now. And again, y'all, I'm human. Blame my head, not my heart. Let me pull up this form so I can download all the email addresses. Let's see what's the last one from the last one. All right. We got about 3 minutes before we get started. So W Brown, let's see. Ooh. Y'all are signing up. I'm trying to you know what? I'm just gonna, instead of trying to send this email now, because I would have to go through and copy the whole list, I'm just gonna send it to everyone as a recording. And I pray that those who subscribe to the YouTube, they got that email, that reminder from YouTube, hey, she's going live. I'm just gonna pray for the best and I apologize to the rest. All right. So it's 10:08. Let's see. Good morning. Good morning. I apologize, Renee. Girl, y'all know how it is with work. I just returned from traveling over the weekend, rest all day Sunday, and I was right back in that classroom this week. And so it's just been a busy week. And yesterday is usually my Friday. Thursday is usually my Friday. But we had meetings. So, you do what you're assigned to do. And so because that's the job that pays me, I'm going to be there when they say be there. 1 second. Clean these screens. Okay, perfect. All right, I'm ready to get started. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Pull up my website. All right. So remind me, where did we leave off last week? What was our article that we discussed? Let me see if y'all are refreshed and you remember. Where did we leave off last week? Which article? Article 2. Yes, we talked about Article 4. So we had a bunch of them. Yes, Article 4. Very good. Very good. Well, good morning and welcome back to your federal government class. I'm excited to be here with you. Tiffany says her last week was so jam packed and good she don't have her notes. That's okay. That's okay. Good morning. Alexa, it's fine if you didn't get a chance to watch Rigged. We'll talk about it a little bit here today because I want to talk about the legislative process, but not just federally, but what happens in our states as well that impacts the federal government. So we're going to talk about several things this morning, okay, as related to the federal legislature, but we may cross into state governments, okay? All right. So last week we spent a nice little portion of the class talking about the census. Let's do a quick refresher. What do you all recall about the census? What are some things impacted by the census? That's CENSUS. Yes, every year that ends with 0. Yes, every year that ends with 0 is a census year. Every year that, yes, we got congressional districts. Good job. Redistricting and how representations goes to a district based on census. Who said that? That was great. Thank you, Tiffany. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Every 10 years and the districts, population count to ensure the correct number of representatives represents each state. So y'all know I like to tell stories. I like to put things in a very real way. So a little bit of story time. So on Wednesday, I had a phone call with a colleague who also teaches federal government, and we were discussing our views of the Constitution. And what I realized, there are still people who this hurt my feelings, y'all. There are still people, even my colleagues who are professors of government, who really have not taken the time to dive into the Constitution. People rely on other documents instead of, let me take y'all back to middle school or maybe even elementary school, depending on when you got the lesson, but definitely high school and college. Let me take y'all back. Do you all remember primary sources? Do you remember what a primary source is? Because during our discussion, he repeatedly named other authors or reference books about the Constitution. And I'm like, I hear you, but I'm going to go with the primary source, right? And so that's what shapes this course. We're not relying on what these men from the 20th century or even the 19th century may have written about the Constitution. You know, I consider myself a constitutionalist, but I'm not going to just depend on my notes from my first constitutional law class to my second one to my third one, my notes as a first year professor versus my notes this year. I'm going to rely on the document itself. The document says what it says. And so I want to start with two terms today. We have literalist and we have contextualist. Literalist, so people who go by the literal words or the definitions of the literal words. And then we have contextualists, or at least theoretically, that's what we're told we have. But I think that we should do a little bit of both because we know what words mean, but then we need to look at the context, the historical context of the intent when it was written. Right? So what shaped the event? What was going on when certain things were written? So like when the 14th Amendment was written, what was going on? It was written not written. It was passed by the United States Congress in June 1866. So what was going on around that time of June 1866? Yes, see your bones. Yes, see your bones. We know the Constitution is interpreted by the Supreme Court. We're going to get to that. But what I'm talking about today is how individuals, citizens who rely heavily in faith, who rely heavily in thought on the Constitution, but not in action or in faith because they have a belief, but they're not backing it by learning. So the average person does not read the Constitution. And I need us to understand not just what our rights are, because our rights, we see our rights through the amendments, particularly the Bill of Rights written by James Madison. But I want us to deal with the Constitution itself, those 7 articles. That's where we are. And the context of the whys that took place. I know the Supreme Court interprets it, and the Supreme Court changes too. The Supreme Court, the landscape of the Supreme Court changes as well, right? Because they don't live forever. We've had how many Supreme Court? Okay, here's a question, and y'all can Google it. How many Supreme Court justices have died this century? Just in the 21st century, how many Supreme Court judges have passed away? I'll be back. I'm not gone. How many Supreme Court justices? Y'all about to talk about me, and I don't care. How many Supreme Court justices have passed away here in the 21st century? All right. Shawana says 2. All right. Who are they? Yes, Carlos, we're in class. Who are they? YouTube, I need to hear from y'all. Who are they? Yes, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Thurgood Marshall didn't die during the 21st century. He died in the 20th century, in the 90s. Sarah, baby, bye. Y'all know I don't play that. Scalia. Okay, Sarah, y'all give me a second. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Scalia. Was there anyone else? O'Connor wasn't on the bench. So I'm talking about people who were literally on the Supreme Court. They were seated on the court. They were on the bench during the 21st century. So that's in the 2000s. Right. And I know why y'all are saying Sandra Day O'Connor. I had to look it up because I'm like, she wasn't on the bench, but she did die. Remember, Ruth Bader Ginsburg replaced her. Okay. So she replaced her in 93. So we got two who passed on the bench. Now, how does that change the landscape of how the court interprets things? It changes it because depending on their philosophical positioning, they can lean one way or the other and can change the majority or the minority shift, right? And so when Justice Scalia died, I think we talked about this the last class, when Justice Scalia died in February of 2020, February of 2020, the Supreme Court would go until April of 2021 with only 8 justices, whereas ordinarily there would be 9, right? And that shift can change the interpretation of the courts because it can shift the majority, right? So in that case, when Scalia died, when he passed away, was he a conservative, considered more of a conservative judge or a more liberal judge or justice, excuse me? All right. Was he more of a liberal justice or a more conservative justice? He was more right-leaning. Yes, he was conservative, right? So how did that impact the courts? When Justice Ginsburg passed in 2020, you know what, I said that wrong about Scalia. Scalia passed in 2016. My apologies. He passed February 2016, and then we did not get a new justice to replace him until April 2017. But Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed in September, right? September of 2020, just like 6 weeks before the general election between then President Trump and former Vice President Biden, right? That's when Ginsburg passed, right? Ooh, orange done got me in my face. I'm glad I got on glasses. That's when Ginsburg passed away, right? Yes, HR. Yes, Candace. Hannah. Yes. So when Ginsburg passed, did that hurt the left? They already did not have a majority, y'all. That was a phone call, so I apologize for the screen stop. They already did not have a majority, but that gave the right even more justices because unlike in 2016, the court did not stop. The sitting president was not stopped by the Senate as what happened in 2016 when Justice Scalia passed. And the Senate, and immediately, I don't even know if they went to sleep, but they immediately held congressional hearings or congressional confirmation hearings to confirm the replacement of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. What was it, 6 or 7 days? It's like a week before the election. What did that do to the court, and how does that impact the court's interpretation of laws? Now, I know I didn't have to go that in depth, but I think it's important for us to recognize that, yes, the Supreme Court interprets the Constitution, but the Supreme Court changes. The Supreme Court changes based on who's in the White House. It changes because people die. It changes because the powers of Congress, what our topic is today, right? But it also changes, I believe, for what we see often, not just in the Supreme Court, but in the federal courts, period. You can have a left-leaning justice who you think is going to be this ultra-conservative that's appointed by a conservative president that may right-leaning conservatives, who is right-leaning, who may lean left more times than not. Like, he or she may lean left over time more than what would have been expected. And the same can be true with those who are on the left. The longer they're on there, they can begin to lean right sometimes in their decisions. And what I think it is that unless you're just Clarence Thomas, I think what happens is they begin to contextualize, and they begin to have what is in human nature, empathy. And so you can see right-leaning left or left-leaning right sometimes on certain issues that come across the court. So yes, the Supreme Court does interpret. I feel like I'm taking this too far. They do interpret, but it's still our duty, because this is our Constitution. It would serve us better as citizens to know what our Constitution. Remember, the Constitution give you an Easter speech before it started. You know, I grew up in a Black Baptist church, so we had Easter speeches. And so the Easter speech is what? We the people, in order to, right? So they give you this introduction, let you know that this Constitution, this document that these framers drafted, argued over, debated from the spring of 1787 till almost the fall, like late summer, because fall begins the 22nd or something of September. Well, the Constitution was done on the 17th of September, so late summer of 1787. So we're looking at what they wrote, right? We're looking at what they wrote literally, but when it comes to the amendments, that's the trick. I think the approach to the articles is probably more literal and there is some contextualism, right? But those amendments are definitely more leaning towards context, because typically amendments are being written in response to something, right? And so the Bill of Rights, when we look at the Bill of Rights, which was passed by the first Congress. So right now we're in the 119th Congress, okay? We're in the 119th conference. All right. We're in the 119th Congress right now. So every 2 years, we elect a new Congress. And I'm kind of giving a review, right? Taking y'all slow before I really jump in it, because there's some things that I sometimes, as a professor, I just assume people know because it's common sense to me. I was just talking to one of my girlfriends who's a, event planner. There are things that she just naturally knows, and she's like, I don't understand, right? And I get that, because she doesn't understand why people don't get things that are just so apparent to her. And I suffer with that too. And so when you're an expert in your field, you have to kind of pause, right? and not get caught up in what you think is common sense. So you have to go back and kind of walk people through it. So as I walk you back through some of these things that I would otherwise assume you knew, just be patient with me. All right. So are y'all ready? Put ready, ready, ready. Put ready in the chat so I know you're ready while I get me a bite of this orange. It's not as sweet as the one yesterday. All right, we got there. We're ready. Okay. So let's take Article 1. And we talked about this. Let's take Article 1, which is the legislature, right? What preceded the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, which we're under today? What event took place prior to the Constitution? What event took place? There's an event that kind of triggered some of the delegates from some of those colonies to go to Annapolis. What caused that? What caused them to go to Annapolis to say, hey, these Articles of Confederation are weak? What caused that? Anybody? Just two C's and two N's. The Revolutionary War, yes and no, but more on the no. But you're in the right ballpark. Yes, Shelby, Shays' Rebellion. Shays' Rebellion, yes, the farmers going home after fighting. Remember, the Revolutionary War doesn't end in 1776 when independence is declared. It actually ends in 1783, right? So you have Shays' Rebellion. You have a farmer by the name of Daniel Shay. And I think this is why we have to, we've got to teach in our homes, but we got to know what to teach. But also, it's too late now, but I wish public schools were not so based on standardized testing, right? Because what happens is the focus is no longer on the learning, but instead on the testing. The focus is no longer on the teaching and on the passion, but on the testing. Because I'm from a family of educators. I think I'm 4th generation educator. It's always like, I don't know if it's 4th or 5th, but like, I'm pretty sure it's 4th generation. Maybe it's 3rd, but education is in my blood, right? And so when I think of that, it makes me appreciate educators, not just the ones that raised me, but just educators. I can think back to my 4th grade teacher. She was from Tennessee. Again, I grew up in Florida. She was from Tennessee. Her name was Ms. Marlowe. She dressed like Little House on the Prairie, tall white lady, looked like she probably was a center on somebody's basketball team. She wore them Little House on the Prairie dresses, but I never forget her lessons, right? I still use her lessons in my life today. As a 9-year-old, right? The things she taught me as a 9-year-old, because that's the impact that teachers make on our lives, right? But our children today, they might get the impact of how a teacher made them feel. But for many of our students, they don't get the impact of learning. They may touch on things. But we think people are learning in schools. They're not, like what we conceive. So let me get on my soapbox for a minute. I'm going to get back to the lesson. So, for instance, I was lecturing one day and I was talking about like how to read. Because when students read, like if I have them read a passage, yes, it's not that they're illiterate. It's that they're not reading in class. There's power in reading aloud. There's power in reading in small groups because you learn how to read in context. They'll read through a sentence You won't know that that sentence had a period. You won't know that it had a exclamation. You won't know that it is a question. You won't know that it has a semicolon or a comma because of the way they read. So if that's the way they read, that's often the way they interpret, right? I'll give you an example. Do me a favor and go to the Second Amendment. So this is going to be a good, and this is going to tie back to Shays Rebellion and everything else. Go to the Second Amendment. So the theme of this section, I'm off my soapbox, by the way. The theme of this section is still Congress, even though we're talking about the Second Amendment, which falls under the Bill of Rights, which was written by James Madison. See how I'm telling you things to put things in context, right? Teaching. Our babies aren't getting this like that. All right. So we have the first Congress. So in order to have the first Congress, we know that the Constitution has to be in place, intact. So the first Congress convenes and they pass the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights are ratified 1789. All right. All right. Thank you for that vulnerability hidden. I can't pronounce the last part. I'm going to try Monquaba. But yeah, so y'all looking at the Second Amendment. So I'm going to read it to you all, right? I'm going to read it to you all, and then we're going to do the context. We're going to look at the literal words, and then we're going to look at the context, all right? You should always, this is what I tell my students, and this is how I live. You should always be like a 3-year-old. What does a 3-year-old always say? Why? Right? 3-year-olds always say why. But why? But why? And one of my favorite artists, PJ Morton, Lord have mercy. PJ Morton has a song, Kid Again. I need us to be a kid again. I need us to find our inner kid, because we get so rushed with this thing called life and adulthood and having to adult and do all this adulting. We don't slow down and be like a kid and say why. All right. So let's look at the why. So we're going to look at it literal, and then we're going to look at it in context. All right. Just look at a little historical context. Okay. And I've done this with the 14th Amendment. Right. So here we go. And we can do it with the 28th Amendment. I would love to do it with that one, because that's the least probably familiar. Most people don't even know we have a 28th Amendment now. Most people don't realize that we have a 28th Amendment, right? And I told y'all it's going to be challenged in the courts. It's in one of my videos on my page. All right. So I hate my hair. I slept so good. I slept myself out of my wrap. And when you have sleep trying to rewrap your hair, just don't. It's not going to turn out right. All right. So the Second Amendment reads, y'all ready? Right? Second Amendment reads, a well-regulated militia. I can stop right there. Let's deal with the literal purpose of saying that, a well-regulated militia. And then we can look at it from a contextual, right? A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I'm going to read it again. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So what is the subject of that sentence? I ask my students that all the time. When you have, because that's one sentence. The Second Amendment is one sentence, one. And it has 1, 2, 3 commas. It has no semicolons. A sentence has two parts, a subject and a predicate, right? What's the subject? What's the subject? Tiffany, absolutely. The subject in that sentence is a well-regulated militia, right? So militia is the thing. The last thing said oftentimes is the thing you need to focus on. So when you look at your subject, militia, that's our focus in this sentence. That's our focus in this amendment. Now I say that as a licensed, and y'all know the rest, okay? So I understand what it say, but I also rely on what the Supreme Court said. So whoever that was earlier talking about the Supreme Court, that's why I'm like, I'm with you, yes and no, because I rely on what the Supreme Court said. Okay, but the focus is a well-regulated militia. So on the record for the world, on the World Wide Web, I am a well-regulated militia. Because I understand in a literal and a contextual sense why that is the subject. I'm pointing at my computer, right? Why that is the subject and the main point of the Second Amendment. Now let's be a 3-year-old and ask, but why? Let's ask, but why? All right. And so we're dealing with, we're walking this thing out historically, right? So we're talking about Congress, Article 1, right? Why do we have an Article 1 to the United States Constitution? Why do we have a U.S. Constitution, a constitution called Constitution of the United States of America, right? Why do we have this constitution that has we the people, right? I thought we had a constitution already. Why do we have this new one? Why was this new one written when the first one is the Articles of Confederation? Why? But why? Be a 3-year-old. But why? Everybody type why. But why do we have this U.S. Constitution if we had Articles of Confederation? Because the Articles of Confederation did not eat its Wheaties. It was weak, baby. The Articles of Confederation were just as weak as that tribute to Quincy Jones on Sunday at the Grammys. Yes, that is shady. Yes, that is intentional. Because I'm still mad about that tribute. It was weak. Just like them Articles of Confederation. All right. It was Tiana. That was terrible. Do y'all understand who Quincy Delight Jones? Let me get on my soapbox. Quincy Jones, y'all. If you go to, I don't know what your if y'all have an iPhone, but if y'all do, you probably own it. But like when you put his name in Apple Music, the top song was not performed. And I get it, because he got a lot of songs, because the man has about 28 Grammys, 30, I don't know. But, and this is shade, Cynthia Erivo had no business on that stage. They could have used Layla Hathaway. They could have used people he actually worked with, is my point. But not to get all on to the Grammys, but when we look at things in context and we look at things literally, I think we have to do both. But I will say the Articles of Confederation was as weak as that Grammys tribute to Quincy Delight Jones. And I just hope BET somebody produces a tribute worthy of being produced to honor somebody like Quincy Delight Jones. Okay. All right. So y'all laughing at me. I'm so serious too. But back to the Second Amendment, right? So the Articles of Confederation are exposed. They're weak because when they're written, they don't really create a central government, right? They're not really creating a central government. They're I need to do my research on Quincy Jones, baby. No, I don't, because I already have. My life is a research of Quincy Jones, like beloved. um, but anyway, there's a lot of what you can call it, critique that is warranted for that tribute, including the fact that y'all gonna hate me for this. I might get up and walk away from the camera, and then when I come back, I'm gonna teach what I was gonna say. But Janelle Monáe shouldn't have done that tribute either. It should have been Chris Brown. I said what I said. If you're gonna do a tribute that requires MJ, got these Chris Brown. I said what I said. I said what I said, and I said what I said. I said what I said. You don't know who you support. That's the colorist. That's the thing about life. But Chris Brown would have killed that performance. Vocally and with his dance artistry, he would have killed that. Okay. I don't want us to break up being friends, so I'm gonna get back to the lecture. I love y'all though. Thank you, Lennons. Thank you. All right, I'm gonna get back to the lecture. Y'all forgive me. Blame my head, because that is definitely my head, but it's also my heart. So let me not even say that. But I do apologize. I meant what I said, but I shouldn't have said it during class. Okay. All right. So when we look at the Articles of Confederation, I'm closing my eyes so I'll stay on task. As we look at the Articles of Confederation, we realize that they're not weak. They don't provide a strong central government, and they really don't provide a connectivity between the colonies. The colonies know that they're independent from their motherland, their previous colonizer, right? They know they're independent. And they know that they have relationships with one another, but they're not functioning in a way that strengthens those relationships. And they're not functioning in a way where they are strengthened collectively in a relationship. Okay. And so when Daniel Shea and the other farmers in Massachusetts returned from the Revolutionary War, from fighting, as they return to only be surprised that there is a lien. There are liens, there are taxes, right? There are liens on their properties, on their farms. And they're like, hell no. They're like, the devil is a lie, you know? So they're already what? Armed. They're already armed, right? We're armed with our pens. So hopefully y'all taking notes. But they're already armed. So they pick up their arms and they're like, we're going to have to come see you, Mr. Governor, right? And so as the governor gets word of this movement that is approaching, he's in a panic because he realizes, and this is going to really dig into the Second Amendment. And this is also going to dig into some literal things that we see today, right? And that we've seen historically. Okay, so it's my eye twitching. So just follow along with me, okay? Just follow along with me. So ultimately, he gets a militia. He gets a militia together that is financed through some wealthy Bostonians, some wealthy people around Massachusetts help finance him a militia. And that's the way they push back on these soldiers, these no-limit soldiers who just fought in the Revolutionary War, Daniel Shea and the homies. That's how they're able to push back on them. And so as they push back on them, it becomes very apparent, like, we're not organized. Did our army did our soldiers, the people who just went and fought for us, just come and like get ready to throw them bows with us? And yes, they did. Okay. Yes, they did. Okay. And so that's why you may have heard of, prior to this course, you may have heard of Shay's Rebellion. It is significant. It has huge historical implications. Shay's Rebellion is significant to the legacy of not just the Annapolis Convention, but the Constitutional Convention that will take place in the spring and summer of 1787, where this current, our nearly 250-year-old Constitution was drafted. Okay. All right. Any questions? I'm going back and I'm going to read this. Yes, Ronnie, closing my eyes, I can see my notes in my head. I've been doing this since I was a kid. If I study, I close my eyes, I can turn the pages to my notes or to the pages in the book. What did that, if there's a graph in a book that I've studied, I take a mental snapshot. Yes. All right. Music lover, get out my notes. Get out my notes. I love the learning that is going on, y'all. I love it. All right. So Kyra J said, how were they effective in their approach of Shay's Rebellion? That's what we're about to get into now. So when Shay's Rebellion happens, the residue, the residuals, okay, the residuals of it. Let's talk about the residuals, right? What's left over, what comes as a result of, right? The residuals of it lead to delegates from 5 of the colonies. I believe it was 5. Yeah, delegates from 5 of the colonies go to Annapolis, Maryland. Now, I don't know how familiar y'all are with geography, right? I don't know how familiar y'all are with geography, but this is what I want you to do. And those of you who are watching this during the replay, because I didn't send an email on Wednesday, let me just say it again. I apologize. I apologize that you're not here for the live. I'm gonna do better next week. This week was just a lot. I'm gonna do better. I'm gonna be organized. I'm gonna just set it in my phone calendar what days to send email announcements. Y'all, this is a new project for me, so I don't really have a rhythm yet with the course outside of the classroom. Like, I don't have my lesson plans teetered in a way that is designed specifically for y'all yet. I just have what's in my notes that I want to talk to y'all about. I don't have a schedule set. We know we're going to typically be Thursdays, but if my work requires me to do something, that's going to supersede this free space all day long. This is my community service. All right. So again, I apologize for not sending the email. That was my bad. So literally, please blame my head, not my heart, because I simply just forgot. I came home Wednesday and I crashed after eating. Now, I cooked some good food, though. I cooked some red snapper, and baby, it was a bussin'. But yeah. And why I mentioned red snapper, let me just tell y'all, I do have a cookbook or a recipe, a collection of recipes. So if you click my website on my page, it'll take you there. And because people are asking me how they can support, so I'll tell you that's the way you can support me. You have the option of ordering the ebook from me directly, or you can order the physical book through Amazon. And I know y'all like, why Amazon? Because I can publish it and they can ship it and they can print it. So until there is a non-jungle website that can do all of those things, I know we have ones that can print. I'm not print that can ship, but I need one that can print and ship, because again, I don't have the capacity to do that like full time. That's not, I love cooking and I love food, but this is my passion right here. All right. So yes, no shameless plug. It just is what it is. Okay. All right. So back to it. So when these delegates from these states, they go to Annapolis and they're there to convene. They're talking about several things. They're talking about how do they improve trade amongst one another? How do they ultimately, how do they prevent another situation like what happened in Massachusetts from occurring? Because it exposes the fact that these colonies lack organization in terms of uh, support, in terms of structure, in terms of organizational structure, in terms of security and defense, right? They lack that. But not only do they lack that, they really don't have any relationships. What's missing here is federalism. There is no federalism at the time. And not everyone wanted federalism, by the way. But federalism, again, let me give you that definition. Federalism is the relationship between a central government. So it's two things. So listen to the definition very carefully. Federalism is the relationship between a central government and regional governments, plural. All right, regional governments. So it can also be connected to how states interact with one another, how states interact with the federal government, right? How the government may have to interact with both, with multiple states on a specific issue. Okay, right? So hopefully that makes sense. So they're dealing with those things, and it was decided like, hey, we probably need to go back to the drawing board because our guiding document, the Articles of Confederation, isn't speaking to these things and is really lacking. Now that we're out of the thick of it, right? Out of the thick of independence, and we're kind of breathing and we know what we want to do. It's now apparent to us we need to do something better. All right. So that definition was for federalism. Federalism is the relationship. Someone on YouTube put it in the comments so I can put it on the screen? Federalism is the relationship between a central government, singular, and regional governments, plural. Okay. Can someone on YouTube put that definition in the chat so I can put it on the screen? Thank you. All right. And could someone on TikTok put it in the chat so that people can see it too? All right. Federalism, the relationship between a central government and regional governments. Thank you so much, Hannah. I love your name, Hannah Samara. That's beautiful. All right. Thank you, Kyra J. Thank you, Shawana. Thank you all. So they decide that, you know what? We need a constitutional convention. Let's go to Philadelphia. So what I was saying about geography, think of the 13 colonies, right? You got them it's the eastern seaboard, right? The eastern seaboard, or the East Coast, literally the East Coast, from the north all the way down through the mid-Atlantic to the south. So Georgia on up, okay? Because Florida is a Spanish territory. That's a whole nother course to talk about Florida. And it's interesting to see Florida today versus what Florida was under Spain, especially as it relates to us, Black people. All right. All right. So I want you to keep in mind that geography, right? So why are they meeting not in Massachusetts where this occurred? Why are they meeting? Why was that first meeting in Maryland, right? What's in Maryland? Demi, what's your question, baby? I see you got a question mark. So Maine to Maryland. Excuse me. Why did they meet in Maryland? Why did they meet in Maryland? The Bay. That's a good guess. Why did they meet in Maryland? Yes, to organize for the Annapolis Convention, but think about where Maryland is located, right? Yes, music lover. It was there because it was centrally located, right? It was centrally located. It was easier to traverse there from both directions. All right, so centrally located. All right, perfect. There, DC wasn't DCing at the time. Who was that? Beautiful B. All right, all right. Yep, Mason Dixon line. Got it, Tiana. Yes. All right. So they meet in Annapolis. Now, in our lifetime, and throughout, like when we look at it historically, following this, Annapolis has had great significance. And y'all, I'm still talking Second Amendment and the first Congress and James Madison, by the way. But we're just looking at things in a bunch of contexts right now and historical significance. What is Annapolis known for today? What is Annapolis commonly known for today? Y'all watch any of them shows like FBI? Naval Academy. And how is it positioned? Anybody know how Annapolis is positioned? It's in the Chesapeake Bay, right? It's in the Chesapeake Bay. All right. It's in the Chesapeake Bay. And that's significant because most of the population then and now, which is going to take us to when we talk about the Fourth Amendment, which is not today, but when we talk about the Fourth Amendment, we're still going to talk about this point that I'm about to make. Much of the population, much of the structure of the nation, so to speak, at this earliest creation, earliest concept of being the United States, where was the population located? Up and down that eastern seaboard, where were they located? Anybody? So we know in Annapolis is the Chesapeake Bay. No, I don't mean citywide wise where they were located. I'm talking about when you think of the populations along the East Coast, right? The population. So from Maine to Georgia, most in the earlier times and still often seen today, most people live, and I'll just go ahead and tell you, most people live within 100 miles of the border. Now, we don't think of the water as a border, but it is, okay? So near the water. Why were they near the water? Because of trade, okay? Because of trade. Because it's much easier to trade through ships, right, up and down. And that's the same reason. Here's a little Jeopardy for you, right? And if you ever land on Jeopardy or some family reunion trivia game, King's Highway. Y'all heard of King's Highway before? In it where you all live, is there a King's Highway? That's the old one, if not the oldest, and I would argue it is the oldest highway, But if it's not the oldest road in these United States, it's definitely the oldest highway. King's Highway goes from north to south. I-95 was built in the same way as King's Highway. King's Highway still exists today. It's called that in various cities. When I'm in Connecticut or New York, it says King's Highway. When I'm in Jacksonville, Florida, it is called King's Highway, right? But it's Post Road is very common too. Boston Post Road, yes, right? But King's Highway, but Boston Post Road doesn't span the entire coast the way King's Highway does, because King's Highway ends in Miami. It's literally A1A. Yeah, I'm ridiculous nerd on the most random stuff. Okay. Why is that significant? Because of trade. When the railroads, Amtrak's probably busiest line originally, same thing. All right, same thing. Coming down. That's a great train trip to take. I don't know if y'all ever take the Amtrak. I love getting on the train. But you can literally take it all the way down. All right. Trade. So essentially, over time, we're improving trade. This is just a tidbit in addition to the subject matter. But back to the subject matter, because y'all see, I can do that with y'all because y'all can appreciate it. Yes, 95 HR. Yep, and they're by ports. All right, and we're gonna. I'm giving this to you all because it's going to be essential when we talk about the Fourth Amendment. So in your notes right now, because y'all are using a notebook, I want you, you know how there are 3 holes in the notebook on the left-hand margin? I want you to draw like a rectangle on the side where the lines are facing like the spiral part. I want y'all to do this right here. Like in the middle. I want y'all to do something like this, okay? And what I want you to do, I want you to put Fourth Amendment, because we're going to come back to that. And I need you to know when you're studying that those two things are connected, okay? So I gave you that tidbit. It's not as relevant right here. It's applicable right here, but it's going to be applicable and relevant when we get to the Fourth Amendment, okay? So we're still dealing with Article 1, but we're also dealing with the Second Amendment. So they decide at Annapolis that, hey, we're going to have a convention. We'll do it in Philadelphia. So here's another trivia thing for Family Night or Jeopardy. What other 2 cities have served as the capital of these United States? What other 2 cities? What other 2 cities? Anybody? New York. That's where the first Congress meets. When James Madison presents these Bill of Rights, New York. Also Philadelphia. Okay. Today, we have Washington, D.C., and that was established in 1790 or 91, D.C., Washington, D.C., which is a city, and more importantly, it is a territory. It is federal grounds, okay? That is our permanent capital, all right? All right, So when they say they're going to go to Philly, they decide they're going to do that in the spring of 1787, and they're there till the end of summer. So late spring, all summer, they're there, they're convening. Remember, in Annapolis, one of their biggest issues was the exposure that happened because of Shays' Rebellion. Okay. So they get to their destination, they're fighting over these articles. And one of the main things that they had to fight through was the legislature. Okay. And the legislature was focused on, was going to be like our way of governing and our way of writing laws and our way of, what's the other word I want to say? Having this federal connection, right? Oh, representation. That's what I was looking for. But they needed powers, but first they had to deal with representation. And I've already walked you all through representation. We did that already. We've gone through the 3/5 compromise. Y'all have learned that them folks was not somewhere measuring somebody. Okay, we can't count this part of them. Y'all, it's 5 people, take away 2. We're going to count them 3. They probably cheated though. Okay, let me be clear. All right. Or it's 5 people, we're going to count them 3. Okay. But whatever it was, they were not going around measuring people. I just, it makes me want to hug people when they say that with so much conviction that they were only counting 3/5 of your body. No, that was philosophically in your head telling you that you were only 3/5 of a person. That is called verbal violence. That was the words that people used to get in our ancestors' heads. But in a literal sense, when they were counting like the census for the sake of representation, baby, they was not out there in the fields measuring the people like that. They just weren't. And the fact that so many of us have heard that over time and have adopted that philosophy as being true, it really breaks my heart. Okay. All right. So, and I see on YouTube, someone said Richmond. Richmond was the Confederate capital. We ain't got to that Civil War, baby, but that's now I can't wait till we get to Reconstruction. All right. And let me just say this: when this semester ends, we're not going to be done with this class. So this class will have at least 2 parts. So I don't know what the summer going to look like for y'all, but I'm thinking that summer is going to be part 2. Summer's probably going to be where we get into that second section. Remember, I told you we're going from 1776 to 1876, 1876 to 1976, and then 1976 to present. So, y'all, we're going to be together. We go together. All right. We family now. All right. Y'all said y'all are here for it. Well, good. As long as the Lord allows it, and time does, and we have a mutual respect, I'm cool with it. This is refreshing for me. And I know it serves a greater purpose than just me. Okay. So where was I? So we've established the why and the how that Congress was created in terms of representation. We've already went down the rabbit hole about the census, and that still today those same practices exist in terms of counting the people located in the state in order to create districts, and people are accounted for in their district. They're accounted for not just in their district, but more so in their counties. So they take a count of all the people, they identify it by city, by county, by state, and the nation. Okay. They identify the census in those categories. So you're looking at a city. What are the census count numbers demographically for a city? What are they for that county? What are they for that state? What are they for the entire nation? Okay. Y'all do me a favor. Go ahead and help me get them hearts up or whatever that is that's pinned I did it to 20 today. I didn't do that 44 again. So if you could help me get those numbers up, okay? Make sure to like and subscribe. Thank you, HR, because I forgot my own commercial. Thank you. So, yes, if you're enjoying this content, please subscribe on YouTube. Please, all y'all, especially y'all on TikTok, subscribe on YouTube. That is going to help me so much. Subscribe on YouTube. Subscribe on YouTube. Please, 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 please. If you are not you're not familiar with my YouTube, you're here on TikTok. If you go to my page, there's a YouTube link, or just write this down in your notes, Pretty Petty Politics. That is my YouTube channel. Make sure you go on there. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you also look at the description. There's a Google form. Listen to the word, complete the Google form. That means include your email address so that I can timely, as I'm committed, timely send you the email so you'll know what's going on with class. Thank you, HR, for reminding me to give my commercial. Thank you. Pretty Petty Politics. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. All right. So they get to Philly. We get through how representation is going to happen. We get the great compromise. We have the 3/5 compromise. We have the great compromise. We have the Jersey plan. We have the Virginia plan, right? David, what have you missed, baby? We still in class. You ain't missed nothing, especially because we had a replay too. So just stay here, hold tight, and then you can replay it any day. All right, via YouTube. All right, Pretty Petty Politics. If y'all there you go. Pretty Petty Politics. Thank you, Tiffany. All right, so they finished the Constitution. One of the powers of Congress is to legislate. That means write laws, right? Is to write laws. Another power that I've already told you that the Congress has is they have the power. Well, all the branches have it. Checks and balances. They have the power to evaluate through a hearing nominees for cabinet positions and nominees for federal courts. That's a power of Congress. They can confirm, meaning grant and appointment, or they can deny an appointment. They can grant an appointment or they can deny it, whether they confirm someone or they don't confirm someone. They hold these hearings in the Senate. Okay. So let's talk about that power, because that is something that we are experiencing right now. Okay. All right. That is something we are experiencing right now. We're looking at this in real time. Okay. So if you go to Article 1, Section 8, it has the powers of Congress. Okay. So Congress is the one to lay and collect taxes. All right. They pay the debts and provide the common defense and general welfare of the United States. They determine what we're going to borrow. I'm not going to read all of these. They establish the rule regarding naturalization and uniform laws. So uniform laws or rules related to naturalization, and uniform laws again on the subject of bankruptcies throughout the nation. All right. They can create money, meaning, hey, we need some more of that created. All right. Coin money and regulate the value of it. All right. They can establish post offices and roads. Now, this one I'm going to say it because people are ignorant and don't understand why we would have it. And so when you say it, they're like, that's just a waste of money. But it's not, because we have to preserve culture. They promote the progress of science and useful arts. Useful arts. User 8730533. Why don't y'all have names? Congress take money from lobbyists and vote to pay for things that lobbyists are buying their votes. We know that, beloved. We're talking about the powers. We're not talking about the actions right now. I need you to stay in class and on the subject, or please leave. Thank you. Because I don't need you bothering my students who want to be here to learn. All right. Did I see Musk is wanting to do away with the penny? Why do y'all give that man so much credence? And I'm being very liberal by calling him that man. That was respect. Okay, back to these powers. Okay, back to the powers. All right. These are ones that we read, but I don't think we always think about. Okay, so here we go. To constitute tribunals inferior to the Supreme Court. What do y'all think those tribunals are? Stacy, he's not cutting out shit. He doesn't have any power. And you're thinking, probably, let me not assume, but you probably are unaware that bills that are very public, you can watch C-SPAN. You ever heard someone talk about the pork in Congress? They're not talking about a sausage company, but the pork is the extra stuff that is stuffed into bills as they're negotiating. I'm just making it very plain and very clear to you, because things get very sensationalized and y'all believe whatever is posted and y'all don't check for no references. You just believe it because it's some random post that's done been posted and gone viral on fucking Facebook. And yes, I'm not in no real classroom, so I'm gonna cuss because this is my classroom and my school. Kind of, but it's definitely my classroom, right? We have to use our common sense. We got to take off these puppet hats and look at things as I started the class off with: literalism and context. Now, C-SPAN done been around for most of all our lives. We just don't utilize it. The internet has been around for us very accessibly and developed very well these last 25 years, longer than 25 years, but definitely these last 25 years. Utilize it with sources that are legitimate. We have a thing called sunshine laws, open records. I'm just making it very clear. And if you do not like it, you can depart. You can exit intentionally. Y'all like my DEI? Depart and exit intentionally. Because, girl, fuck you. All right. Back to the lesson. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I even had to go there. But I check people to keep the balance, because otherwise I would carry it. And then I'm stressed all day. I'm going to check you right where you fuck up with me. I think it's the 40s, y'all. I think this is what happened when you're in your 40s, and I'm loving it. And I'm not trying to persuade you politically any kind of way as students. What I'm trying to do is open up your minds and not just adopt something because it fits a narrative, but to actually foster the practice of principled thought processes. Okay. Baby, I don't match energy, but I will check that ass. I don't match energy. Because they could never, ever touch this energy. I don't waste my energy like that. So no, I, I won't say that I match energy, but I will definitely get on that ass. All right. Queen said, wait till I'm in my 50s. All right. So back to the actual text. Our text is what kind of source? What kind of source is the Constitution? Thank you, Harold. Oh, Harold, I wish you would have said that on YouTube because I would have pinned that. Harold said, for those of you on YouTube, he said pork barrel spending is added to bills that are being passed by Congress for special projects. Yes, Hannah. Thank you. Yes. The Constitution is our primary source. Primary. So I need us to focus on the primary source when it comes to this government. Now, I know I just did a bunch of cussing, but the primary source for these days ahead of us supersede this Constitution. It is the supreme, and I ain't talking about court. It's the supreme power, the ultimate power, the creator of all powers, the one who holds us all in his hands. Okay. Y'all know, because I'm always go there too. Always. I separated from my work, but outside of work, I'm always give it to you wrong. All right. Thank you, Lord. All right. So as you read through Section 8, I'm not going to go through all these, but as you read through Section 8, and especially if you've never read through Section 8 of Article 1, you see that these powers are listed in a very, very literal sense. And then when you do the context, you understand that the context is they didn't have shit in the first place. I know y'all like that. She was just talking about the Lord. Now she cussing. Okay. But they did not have this in the first place, right? So they are now establishing, because they're realizing like, we got caught up, or you got caught up, Governor of Massachusetts, but it exposed all of us. So we need to throw these things in so that we can have some structure to our governance. Okay. All right. That makes sense to y'all? Let me know. Say, makes sense. If you have a question, let me know you got a question. Okay. If you got a question, let me know you got a question. It's a good time to take a question. All right. Makes sense to everybody? Okay. It looks like it's making sense. All right. Perfect. All right. Again, when you look at the Constitution, it's important that you're not just literal. And I know people want you to choose, are you a literalist or are you a contextualist? Baby, you can look at things literal, but the context, if you know the history, then you know the why. And that's why I say we have to be like 3-year-olds. Okay. That's why I say we have to be like 3-year-olds. Okay. Yes, he is trying to create a coup. Okay. He is. I give you that, Mr. Harrell. I agree. All right. Here's a question. I'll put on the screen. Professor, I have a question in the time frame we are in. The writing of the Constitution seems to be lofty at best, as the framers left the convention and went home and did whatever they wanted anyway. Have you read the Constitution, baby? Because that's not what happened. Many of them went on to be a part of the first Congress. And one of the first things that the first Congress did was they passed the Bill of Rights, which was written by James Madison. But there were other amendments that they wanted that did not make it through, including the 27th Amendment, which did not become an amendment till 1992. But let's look at how lofty they are. And then let's kind of look at the legitimacy of what the Constitution is. And that's what we're looking at. So is it loftiness or is it legitimate? And I think when we settle down into the document itself, it's not as much of a lofty idea. I think that's what we use. That's the terminology that is used by those who want to get rid of it. Like, it's this lofty idea. It's not realistic. It is realistic. It is realistic that we have checks and balances. It is realistic when we use this same model and we go all over the world introducing democracy to others, manipulating what was drafted in 1787, right? She said, so in the first Congress, did they need a percentage of the vote? Give me more on that. What do you mean percentage of the vote? Which vote? Remember, think about this. You ever moved into a new place? When you move into a new place, you kind of make a list of the things that you know you need, right? And you try to make sure you have those things. And then over time, you begin to realize I need more. So Congress, so in the House, it's 50. It's 100 people in the House. So in the House, it would have to be 50. Excuse me. In the Senate, there are 100 people. So in the Senate, it would be 51-49. And then and that's today. Back then, they weren't that big. So it would have been 26, right? Because there were 13 colonies or states. But then with the House, it depended on the population, right? So I don't know off the top of my head how many people made up the House of Representatives. I don't have that number, but it would have been the majority of the votes from the House and then the majority of the votes from the Senate to pass a bill through or an amendment through. Actually, it wouldn't have to be 50-50. I done got thrown off. Okay. Faint not 421. Send me an email. Did you get an email from me? It's prettypettypolitics@gmail. Send me an email and I'm going to come back to this because I just caught on to what you're asking me, but I want to answer it with clarity. So send me an email and I definitely will get on that. So the the first Congress, like we're in the 119th Congress now, the size of Congress has changed over time based on the population of the nation. And so the idea of a lofty idea, of the Constitution being a lofty idea, I get why people will have those sentiments. But when we look at things in the context of the why, that's why I said we have to go back to being a 3-year-old. I think it begins to answer those questions for us. Now, in terms of the technicalities of how they voted, that's something else. So send me an email and I will respond to that via email, but I'll also bring it up at the top of our next class, okay? Which should be next Thursday. Yes, Steph, we have 2 chambers. We don't call them houses. We have 2 chambers. So we have another question. Thank you, Music Lover. I was getting mixed up with everything because of the numbers that were presented on the screen. So I went to the size of the Congress. And so that's what threw it off. That's why I slowed myself down so I could take it all in. But thank you. All right. So let me deal with this first question. Steph Diggy asked, are there 2 houses? They're not 2 houses, they're 2 chambers. So we have 2 chambers in Congress. We have the House of Representatives, which is the larger chamber, and that's based on what you'll hear me refer to as the Virginia plan, all right, where larger states wanted wanted representation based off population. Then the second chamber is the Senate, which was based off equal representation, where each state will have the equal number of representatives in that chamber. Okay. Now, there are some who feel like that makes the Senate elite and the people don't have representation. I'm like, you're not even looking at the representation. They literally now have 3 votes in Congress versus just 1, the people. And so one of the assignments I gave last week was to look up to see who your 3 employees are in the U.S. Congress today, in the 119th Congress. So who are your 3 employees? I told you my 3 were Sylvester Turner, U.S. Representative Sylvester Turner, U.S. Senator John Cornyn, and U.S. Senator Ted Cruz. Okay. So we each have 3 employees because we're their bosses through our votes, right? But we have to vote. So we have 3 employees in Congress. Congress is 2 chambers, the House and the Senate. Now, I know it's confusing because people refer to people in the House as congressmen, right? And they refer to senators as just senators, but combined, they form our Congress. Okay. And they have different responsibilities and roles. They have different qualifications. They have different terms. And all of this is found in Article 1. All right. So let me go to another question. So we're not going to talk about the Federalist Papers today, Steph Diggy. Not today, but we can, but just not today. I really want to kind of stay on track because y'all see what happens when I get off track. Even the justices have flip-flop depending on what's politically expedient. Yes, Shelby, we talked about that earlier, how some can typically be left-leaning and then lean right, and some can be right-leaning and then lean left. Okay. I'm just going back through the questions. I'm checking YouTube. There are no questions up there. Let's see what TikTok has. I'm just going through. I don't know what Broadway vans are, Steph Diggy. Sorry, Broadway fan. Can you talk text? Oh, okay. You was doing that. Make sure I'm not missing anything. Do you believe it's time that black people do what, Cal? You believe it's time black folks to move on from the Democratic Party? Girl, why you ask me that loaded question? And I hope this is Carolyn and not Calvin. But Cal, why would you ask me that loaded question on here? Don't you love me? Don't you care about my well-being? I think it's time for people to become knowledgeable and less emotional. And less, and I ain't just talking about black folks, I'm talking about everybody, and less entitled. Because knowledge will set you free. All right. Let's see if they ain't doing nothing. What are Republicans doing? Like, we beat up on the Democratic Party, right? We beat up on the Democratic Party. And we tend to accept what the Republican Party does. And I'm talking about everybody, right? But when it comes, because y'all want to talk about party politics, and I hate party politics. When it comes to citizens, though, where we fuck up is we're not knowledgeable. So we're not knowledgeable, we're not organized, and we're not making demands. But we're very emotional. We got a lot of opinions on these here social media apps. But we're not making any plans, we're not making any demands, and we're not organized. Okay. Um, Shelby, I was referring to the methods of judicial interpretation, originally textualist versus originality, textualist, moral. Okay. Honestly, it's either side helping the people at the moment. Who y'all in these emotions, baby? When you gonna help yourself? That's why I keep going back to that keyword knowledge. Let's see. Think you were going to discuss malicious a little bit more. I'm getting back to it. We need knowledge on the yeah. All right, y'all ready? I apologize, YouTube, but I was trying to see what I missed. All right. Um, Thank you, Amber. Regardless of party, we need to hold our reps and senators accountable for their action and inaction. And that's it. They're your employee, whether or not you voted for them. Y'all know, here it is. I don't know if any of y'all have ever worked in management and you have a panel that does interviews, right? And so the panel decides, hey, this is the person we think should be hired. And then one person might be like, I don't agree. But once they hired, they're now the employee, right? So you still have to hold them accountable. So whether you agree with President Trump or not, you have to hold him accountable. And holding him accountable doesn't happen through and I don't, what the hell do you call a post on X? See, that's why Twitter should have never been sold, because a tweet makes sense. But whether it's a post or a thread or whatever, that's not holding him accountable, right? You hold him accountable by putting you on Congress, because he can't do shit without Congress. He can't start a war. He can't spend no money. Congress. That's why we're going through the powers of Congress. And it don't matter who the he is in the White House or the she, or hell, maybe one day the they. I know y'all hate that. Some of y'all hate that, but let's just keep it 100. Things change, right? But at the end of the day, we need to understand what powers Congress has, and we need to check them, because we can change the fabric of Congress every other year. Every other year. But we don't think in those terms. We don't think in terms of midterms, right? We don't think that we got these employees that got this power. You know, we love the sensationalism of Jasmine going back and forth with them folks. But what is, like, Jasmine is representing for her congressional district. It's very clear. She's there for the citizens of the United States, as they all should be, but she's there working for her district. Do you know what committees your member of Congress is on? Your member of the House of Representatives? Are you emailing them? Are you calling their office? I know online there's people posting the phone number to the Capitol. Baby, go look up who your representative is. Get the phone number to their office in DC and in your district. They literally have an office in your district. Literally. Go by there. Go by there. Raise hell. If they're doing a good job, say, hey, they're doing a good job. Ask them when the next town hall meeting is. The in-person one, not no damn Zoom. Because these are your employees, but we treat them like they're some celebrities, like they some pie in the sky. These are your employees. But if you don't hold folks accountable, then they're not going to be accountable. All right. We need, I think you're going to discuss. I'm coming back to that stuff. I'm about to get back to militias. All right. All right. Thank you, Kyra J, for putting that in there. I think I should be able to pin this. Yes, I was able to pin it. Thank you. Yeah, I told you I'm learning how to use TikTok. I'm just used to, I've been on this app for years, and all I did was scroll, like, I might repost something I like, but I really wasn't posting myself, right? Y'all, this used to put me to sleep. So when once that phone would fall on my face, I would get up, come put that phone in the kitchen, put on the charger, right? But I never had the habit of posting, so I don't know how to use all the tools yet. So y'all just take me slow and be patient with me. All right. Okay. Back to what we were talking to, so I can get back to the Second Amendment, right? So one of the things that is in here in terms of the powers is to declare war. Okay. And right up under declaring war, it says, and this is getting us back to Shay's Rebellion. All these little nuggets, they connect. Okay. To declare war, and then it's followed to raise and support armies. What they didn't have prior to Shay's Rebellion was an organized federal military. And what is our, without giving the answer away, but there's no way to not give it away. What is our national military here in the United States? And just listen to me carefully. That is present in every state. That the governor of Massachusetts did not have until he called up the wealthy to hire him one. Thank you, Cece, the National Guard. Do y'all see the connectivity of that in Shay's Rebellion and the intentionality? So as we look at this, when we look at this in a literal state, we understand that they wanted to raise and support an army, right? But we also see that in a contextual thing, what was this? What was the historical significance of needing that? One, it didn't exist, and two, they had just learned their lesson by Shay's Rebellion. Okay. All right. They had just learned their lesson through Shay's Rebellion. All right. To provide and maintain a navy. Why do you think they wanted a navy? What did I tell you earlier when I gave you this? When I told you in your notes, why you got all your notes here, just to draw this box over here, this rectangle, and write Fourth Amendment. Why did I say that? Hey, fun, love, and unlock 43. Just get you a notebook or a piece of paper and a pen and just start taking notes and listen and take notes, or just listen and then go back to when this ends. I have a YouTube. Pretty Petty Politics is on my page. You can click that link. You can subscribe and you can go back and watch this video. Okay. But we're talking about federal government. This is a federal government class. So VBPW, girl, that is a tongue twister. You're correct. To protect the borders. We wanted to provide and maintain a navy to protect the borders because most of the positioning of where folks lived and still live today is within 100 miles of a border, most of which is water. Only our northern border with Canada and a small part or a significant part of our southern border is with Mexico. But to the east, the west, and the south, we have water. So a navy makes sense. See, if we just be like a 3-year-old and ask why, we can look at it in context. So to protect the borders. Okay, so y'all ready? Y'all ready for this? To provide for calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrections, and repel invasions. I could end right here. I'm telling y'all, Shay's rebellion is way more significant to the reason for this Constitution. See, sometimes if you just have a little bit of gumption about yourself, you can change the trajectory of the future. Daniel Shay just wanted his damn farm back. Daniel Shay had no idea, and hell, his descendants might not even realize the historical significance of what he led in Massachusetts when he had that lien on his farm and the impact it has on us still to this day. So look at all the different things I'm showing you that have come about because Daniel Shay had the nerve to stand up for himself and take action. Now, the way he went about it, granted, but I do understand, right? What he did wasn't an insurrection at the time because that did not exist, because the federal government did not exist in the way that it exists today. What Daniel Shay did, although people will misuse that, let me be clear. What he did, that was in response to what was being done to him. But again, it wasn't like he was a domestic terrorist or a domestic threat, because there was no rule or law to address what he was doing. And that's why we have to legislate. So that's why they had to legislate to prevent. This makes sense. If this makes sense, say, got it. Just say got it. If this makes sense, just say got it. All right. So where are we? Oh, let's do this right here too. Go ahead and share this live. Go ahead and share this live, whether you text it to somebody or you tag somebody. Go ahead and share this live with 3 people. Y'all know I like the number 3. All right. But I'm not done with the militia, y'all. I'm loving these likes and these shares. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Yes. So here we go. We still talking about militia. You know how? I know. Because it say so. To provide for organizing, arming, and disciplining, that means training, right? And correcting, right? Discipline. The militia, to provide for organizing, arming, and disciplining the militia, and for governing such part of them as may be employed in the service of the United States. Reserving to the states respectively the appointment of the officers and the authority of training militia according to the discipline prescribed by Congress. Now, did we just talk about the National Guard? Because who needed a National Guard when Daniel Shay and the homies got their guns that they used in the Revolutionary War and started marching towards that governor's house? Who needed a National Guard? Who needed? Yeah, Massachusetts. Thank you, Shelby. Massachusetts needed a National Guard. But see, some people read this and just be like, they don't understand the why. But we're going to be like 3-year-olds. We're going to ask why. Okay. To exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district not exceeding 10 miles square. Y'all tell me what I'm about to talk about. As may by session of particular states and acceptance of Congress become the seat of the government of the United States, and to exercise like authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislature of the state in which the same shall be for the erection of forts, magazines, dockyards, and other needful buildings, and to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying out into execution the foregoing powers and all other powers vested by this Constitution in the government of the United States or in any department or officer thereof. Steph, the National Guard is what we call it now, but essentially it was the militia created by Congress. So the National Guard is a federal militia assigned to various states to respond to needs in those states. That's why they have to go to training every month. Every state is different when their guard go and train or what have you, but they're not activated, right? So there are two people who can activate the National Guard, and one supersedes the other. So the National Guard can be activated by the governor if there's a need, right? And then it can also be activated federally if it needs to enforce something federally in that particular state. So each state has its own National Guard. So in essence, the National Guard is a federal militia. And you just think Shays Rebellion had Massachusetts had a National Guard, or, so a Massachusetts militia that was a part of a federal system, right? Because even though we have bases around the country, who's going to activate faster? Base or the Guard? Hopefully this makes sense. How was it legal to use the National Guard on citizens? I need a little bit more context to that, HR. Like when it happened, like, is there a particular scenario? Because we have to look at what law was there. But again, when Daniel Shay did what he did, Daniel Shay had not broken any laws yet. Because they stopped him before he could. Yes, Demi. So if they deploy the military on American citizens, it would be the National Guard. Deploy, that sounds so technical, but I think I know what you mean. But we're going to use some examples of the National Guard. We're going to go through some. So the National Guard is a federal unit positioned in each state that the governor of said state can activate. So they can run off orders of the governor. In general, that's who they run off the orders of. Howsoever, the federal government can supersede the powers of that governor because this is a union. Okay, this is a union. And can authorize, direct that guard to act on behalf of the federal government. Okay. Tangi, I don't know what you're talking about, but if you send me an email to Pretty Petty Politics, I can look further into that so that I can give you a more critically thought out and knowledgeable response. All right. I don't know if that's actually correct, Music Lover. That was more so local law enforcement that was called on participants or people who were a part of the civil rights movement. Now, there were incidents during that time where the National Guard was used, but that was in defense of those who were a part of the civil rights movement in general. All right, so I'm gonna get to some examples here in a second. All right. Now, this is a good one. So HR put on YouTube during the Black Lives Matter protests in DC summer of 2020. Now, why would the National Guard be activated in DC? What did I just read from the Constitution, from Article 1, Section 8? What did I just read to you that would be significant to that point as to why it was the National Guard? Tiffany had a question. Hold on, I'm going back up to it. Crystal, thank you. In your emotions, you're in your feelings, you're not looking at the reality, because college students all last year were being threatened with the National Guard. Cameron Mook, what state are you in? You said by your governor. I'm looking for your question, Tiffany. You're right. It is moving fast. I'm going back up. Y'all give me a second. So question, Congress can send the guard, but the president cannot do to no, the president activates the National Guard. Congress created it. Congress can also demand of the president. So here in the powers, it's giving you the reason for the guard. Right? I hope this is making sense. That's why I'm slowing down. But why is it DC? Why was the National Guard called for DC in 2020? Bella, I'm gonna get to that. Y'all be trying to jump ahead of me. Y'all are saying insurrection. That ain't the answer. Threat of violence, Tangi. Okay, so the reason why the guard, I just read it to y'all. Y'all, come on, y'all. You got to turn on your ears, okay? I just read it to you here in Section 8 of Article 1, all right? Listen carefully. To exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district not exceeding 10 miles square as may by session of particular states and the acceptance of Congress become the seat of government of the United States, and to exercise like authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislature. And this is going to connect to Article 4 later, you guys. Of the legislature of the state in which the same shall be, and I just mentioned that with another word, for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings. Okay, so the reason, the answer to HR's question, which she later remembered, and so it's on the YouTube page, is because the District of Columbia, Washington District of Columbia, is a territory of the United States. Congress has power over those. So in response to what happens that's like someone going to Fort Bragg. Yes, the military is there, the MPs are there, but you know what else is going to happen so that no one else gets up there to Fort Bragg? The National Guard is going to be activated. If not first by the governor, for sure from Washington. Okay? The National Guard is there to protect the interests of the government. Now, when we look at it from a state perspective, the governor may activate the National Guard based on the governor's or the government's interest in that state, basically the governor's positioning. So we saw that in Ferguson in 2014. Hello? Right? But legitimately, that wasn't wrong. Now, we may not agree with him doing that, but did he have the power, the legal power to do so? Yes. So it's discretionary based on who has that power. And so the governor can do that. Now, what if the governor was wrong? Hold on. I need to respond to a text on my MacBook. Hold on. Okay. YouTube, I'm coming back to you. Okay. Sorry, I got caught up. It's not just state capitals. All right. It could be because people do things based on their politics. Because I promise if something go down here in Houston, we're not really liked by Austin. Let me just say that. So the guard might get activated here by the governor. Thank you, Shelby. Or if their governor does, music lover, DC can redirect a governor's orders. Okay, DC can redirect a governor's orders, meaning reverse it. And y'all, this isn't about, as I'm teaching this, I'm not teaching it from one purview or to be punishing or like direct. I really want us to understand the functioning. So when things happen, we can understand whether or not it's legal, or we can understand the why. We can be the three, or we can answer our own why. Well, they're doing that because they have the power. They have the power. But what's the check to the governor if the governor is out of line? What's the check to that? The check to that is DC has power. Now, if they are aligned, you might not see nothing change. All right. So again, this is definitely for educational purposes. Anytime I'm about to give you my opinion or something like that, you're going to know that's what it is. All right. DC meaning the president. Yes. The governor can ignore what the hell he wants to, but that guard better not. That guard better not. But what happens if the guard does? Then you're going to see. You're going to see some movement. You're going to see some tables shaking. Thank you, Sparky. Yes, the president's commander-in-chief of the military. Thank you. Coach, I mean the National Guard. Yeah. George Wallace. I keep telling y'all to get out my notes. Music lover. Yes. And that was going to be my example. All right. So you're welcome, HR. So let's get through that. What time is it? 12 o'clock. So it's been an hour. I need to respond to this text. Okay. All right. So let's look at examples of this, right? So what we just went over, let's look at examples of this. And I don't remember the year, and I should know the year. Following, I want to say it was 1960. All right. Hold on. Come through. All right. This is giving me an anxiety. All right. I'm back with y'all, YouTube. I'm sorry. I had to respond to the text. It's something. I have folks coming over, so I had to respond. All right. So 1960, I believe. I want to say it was 1960, but let me just say this. And I'm pretty sure it was 1960. If it was another year, y'all just put it in the chat. Just help me out. Okay. So I'm closing my eyes so I can go through this. So Brown versus Board of Education, right? I think in one of my previous videos, I talked to you all about the Westminster case out of California, which preceded Brown versus Board of Education. Is that correct? Did I talk to y'all about that? Yes. Okay. So it's this big thing going on in the country that has to do with segregationists, right? And we still see it today. See, I'm trying not to get on my soapbox. That won't be a part of this lesson. That might just be one of my videos where I'm giving my opinion. Okay. But what happened was you have these segregations. So what we're seeing around the country is two things. We're seeing communities refuse to follow the Supreme Court decision of Brown versus Board. We're seeing local communities legislating in ways to try to circumvent around the Supreme Court decision. And we're seeing an influx of new schools opening. What are these new schools, you ask? Private schools, okay? We're seeing private schools open. And so after that 1954 decision, we have this 19, I don't want to say it was 60. It was right before the Civil Rights Act. Let me just say this. And that way I know I'm correct. It was right before the Civil Rights Act. But because of that decision, schools were starting to be forced, schools and school districts were starting to be forced to desegregate. All right. They're being forced to open their doors because you got tax money that come from Black families, Black homeowners that are paying for these schools, but yet, because all the money go into one pot, let me be clear, right? All the money goes into one pot. It's collected by the tax assessor for your county, right? And then, or your county clerk, however your county is set up, because every county and every state is different, right? So every state has their own way. So y'all, I'm gonna answer questions in a minute. So that money is collected. That money it should be equitably divided among schools, but we all know historically what happened is because the schools were segregated, some schools, the schools that did not allow children of color, and particularly Black students, Black children to attend, those schools were more heavily funded. And so like the books, the materials, the equipment, the desk, those things, the furnishings, the used furnishings from those schools were passed over to the Black schools. And so they were still, despite Brown versus Board, I gotta close my eyes. Despite Brown versus Board ruling overturning Plessy versus Ferguson, so that ideology, that philosophy of separate but equal, they were still trying to say it was equal because, well, they have books, they have desks, they have a school, they have a roof. So I don't see what the big problem was. So what happened was when Brown was decided, schools were still refusing to obey the Supreme Court. Okay. And so you had families, parents, and others who were adults who were literally trying to block the integration of these schools. So walk with me through history. Think of Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas. So the Little Rock 9. Okay. Think of that. Okay. Think about them trying to integrate that school. You can think of, I want to say it's the University of Oklahoma, either the University of Nebraska. Like they would put black, is this guy, he was in graduate school, black guy. They made him sit outside the classroom. And they said it was still legit because he was in the class. They let him come to school, but he couldn't sit amongst the white kids, right? So they're disobeying the federal law, right? So these are just examples, not deep examples, but some examples. So in 1963, I'm going to go with 63 because I know it was just before the Civil Rights Act. In 1963 in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, all right? In Tuscaloosa, Alabama in 1963, you have governor, then T-H-E-N, Governor George Wallace. George Wallace was like, segregation today, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. And he was like, F that Supreme Court decision. This is Alabama, and as long as I'm here, yada, yada, yada. And what happened? Because he was blocking the door. What happened? Who was called? The National Guard. Because who was the president? Make sure y'all with me. Who was the president? Yeah, Wallace was off the chain. JFK. And what did he do? He ordered the National Guard. Which National Guard? The Alabama. The Alabama National Guard. It's not like the National Guard came down from D.C. No, they was right there in Alabama already. Whereas they usually took their orders from the governor, they had to take their orders from the commander-in-chief. All right. Okay. Any questions? Then Wallace stand down. I mean, he was pretty much escorted out. They let him finish his little 2-3 extra words, and then like, no, you got to go. Okay. Now I see y'all quote, and I get the gestures you're making. I do. But when we get caught up in that, we start missing stuff. So again, and that's what the powers that be want us to get caught up in, instead of knowing what to do and then holding the accountability and getting rid of people. We talk about it more than we be about it. Tangy, what the hell are we talking about? Y'all got to stop coming up in here disrupting now. I don't mind answering your questions, but keep them on topic, please. That's unfair. Because the educator in me wants to answer your question, but I also don't want to take us off subject. Okay? But I'm going to answer it. But y'all, please be mindful of your questions. Make sure they are in the right context and they're timed properly. So if we're talking about oranges, right? Don't come here and ask me about no damn Granny Smith. Talk to me about citrus, and I understand. Ask me about a lemon. I could understand why you might ask me about a lemon, because they peel. All right. So let's go to Tangi's question. No, I'm going to answer it. So the Department of Education, right? The Department of Education, I'm imagining you're talking about the federal Department of Education, because every state has a Department of Education. But you're asking about that versus the Board of Education. So the full name of that case, or part, because it's a long name, but it's the Topeka, Kansas. So the Board of Education for Topeka, Kansas. So that's the difference. So like, I'm from Polk County, Florida. Our schools are called Polk Public Schools or Polk County Public Schools. I live in Houston, Texas. We don't have county schools. What we have are ISDs, right? So my residence is in Houston, and I'm in the part of Houston where the public schools are Houston Independent School District. If I live just a little bit to the west, about 3 miles to the west, I would be in Spring ISD. So it depends on your locality, what your local school district is named. So Topeka, Kansas was the Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas. Houston or Texas, we have ISD. So it might be Dallas ISD. It's not Dallas Board of Education, but people may refer to the people who are the leaders of that ISD, that independent school district, as the board, right? So the board members or the trustees, or like where I grew up or where I'm from, the school board, right? So it's a matter of just locale, I would say. But the bigger one, the one that's governing for now, is the Federal Department of Education, which is about to be ran by a woman who was an executive of a wrestling company. Y'all need to check to see how your employee voted on her confirmation. All right. So hopefully I answered your question. Okay. So Brown versus Board is telling you that Brown, one child, there's a whole bunch of them, but they always just use one name because it's too damn long to continuously say. But when you look at the actual document, the actual lawsuit, you'll see all the names, all the parties involved. All right. The plaintiffs and the defendants. Okay. But hopefully that explained it. Yes, I agree, Tiffany, but I got to stay with the present. Okay, y'all ain't got no more questions. Let me look over here. We need to stop being emotional, please. Can we stay on subject, please? Baby, they on y'all head over there on YouTube. They like, y'all are off topic. But that's not going to happen again. But it's in me to want to answer because, you never want to make someone feel like their question is not relevant. Her question, their question is not worthy of an answer because her question was, but it was just not timely. And I've been dealing with that for years, and I can't respond like I responded in this space. I usually just write it down and say, I'll get back with you. But when you're teaching, you sometimes don't get back to it. So if you can answer it, answer it. But if you all could do me a favor as adults, just wait. And if there's something you really want to know, you can always email me, or you can send me an inbox here on TikTok. But I prefer you to email me because if it's something that may be worthy of full discussion, that allows for me to give you a fuller response via email, as well as for us to come back to it, whether through a short video or a clip or in a lecture. All right. Thank you, Tiffany. But I also don't want y'all to be off topic trying to answer and then you missing what you need to get. So let's try to stay focused. I appreciate y'all. I do. So wait for the Q&A. That's why when you're in class, they be like, any questions? All right, any questions right now? And I try to do that throughout the lecture, not just at the end. That way, right? So maybe when you're taking notes, I use a lot of boxes, y'all. So one of my things was I would have a box at the top of my page, and anything that I had a question about, I dropped it there. And the reason why I dropped it there, because they probably were going to get to it, but if they didn't, then I could reference it at the end of class when they say any questions. All right. Reggie, you did not miss the whole lesson today. We're still very much so in class, but also this is recorded. You can find on Pretty Petty Politics on YouTube, so you can have the playback. All right. I love y'all. Let's keep going. All right. So we got George Wallace. We've talked about Section 8. So we've gone over some of those powers, right? Let's shift to another part of the Constitution. So I told you all I wanted you to read Article 4. I've said that multiple times. All right. Article 4 gives you more powers of Congress. Even though Article 1, when you're a little kid, and you taking like those early social studies classes, they tell you we have 3 branches of government, right? And they tell you we have, and then they say, what are they? They say the legislative, the executive, and the judicial. And why? Why do we say it in that order? We say it in that order because that's the order that they're presented in the Constitution. However, they're not limited. Oh, I need to go get my eyebrows waxed. I got to do that today. I'm gonna write that down. Brows. But they're not limited to just that article. They may have powers that appear elsewhere in the Constitution. Remember, the Constitution has how many articles? I want to put my hands up so bad and tell y'all. But how many articles does the Constitution have? 7. Okay? 7. Constitution has 7 articles. Legislative, executive, judicial, the states, right? The states. 5 is what? We've talked about 5. 5 is amendments. 5 is amendments. We're talking about the Constitution, not the amendments, music lover. All right. 5 is amendments. 6 is debts and supremacy. And 7 is ratification. Okay. 7 is ratification. All right. So we have 7 articles to the Constitution. The Constitution. Amendments to the Constitution. All right. Amendments. You see, I took my glasses off and I added them because I amended my vision. All right. Amendments, we have 28. Okay. We have 28 amendments. We have 28 amendments. That reminds me, I need the email publisher. All right. We have 28 amendments, 7 articles. It's okay. I just want to make sure we're all on it. Okay. So if you're liking this content, it's time for a commercial. If you're liking this content, please go ahead, please like. I'm 9 for 20. So if y'all can get me 11 more of those hearts and gifts, please, if y'all can send me some gifts so I can make it to my goal of 20 today. Show me that you're appreciating this. Remember, this is free. This space, this classroom is free. I believe in free education. I do. If you want to support me, you can support me by purchasing one of my recipe collections. You can do that through my website, which is on my homepage. I would really appreciate that. You can get an ebook and I would send it to you directly, or you can order from Amazon and get the physical book. But that's how you can support me if you want to contribute to me financially, right? So I'm still making sure you receive something, and it's not just you cash apping me or something. I just think that's too that's doing too much. The other thing is, make sure you share this video. Make sure you're sharing and you invite at least 3 people to the live right now. Go ahead and share to 3 people, and if you can send gifts, I would appreciate it. I'm halfway there. I'm 10 out of 20, but let's go. We got, we're at 12:28 my time. So we got about 15 more minutes before we shut down the lecture and we go to our end of class discussion and we set the tone for next week. Not by Bread Alone is the name of the book. If somebody wants to put that in the chat. I'm able to type it here on YouTube. All right. All right. So, where were we? Oh, Article 4. So, in Article 4, we get the relationships between states. We see federalism. Remember, I gave you that definition earlier. We see federalism, right? We see the relationship between states and the relationship between the federal government. But we definitely see how states interact with one another. So, when we look at um, article, let me go back. When we look at Article 4, I just got to get it pulled up here. I'm sorry. We see in Section 1, it's full faith and credit, right? So that's how I can be in Virginia driving a car with a Texas driver's license, because full faith and credit shall be given in each state to the public acts, records, and judicial proceedings of every other state. So a driver's license in that regard will be a record, right? It's a record that I am actually licensed, legally licensed to drive. All right. So another state would have to respect that. Now, here's a trick. Colorado, you can smoke them trees, right? You can purchase it. You can walk up and into a store and buy marijuana as much as you want, as many cookies, edibles, or actual plants and buds, whatever you want to call it, as you want. But if you put that in your suitcase and you fly from Colorado to some other state, you have violated federal law. You're actually violating the federal law in Colorado. But the federal government is not really like focused on that right now. But if you take that in the air, you begin to transport it. We call that interstate, right? You're moving it across state lines. That's interstate. That's a violation, right? So if you interstate that into Texas and you are caught, then that's going to pose a big issue for you federally and through the state law, because in Texas it's illegal. But let's say I have possession here in Texas. All right. Say I have possession here in Texas, right? Depending on where I am in Texas and the amount I have, I might be okay. So here in Harris County, if I have, I think it's 4 grams, I'll just use that as the example. I don't know if that's the actual amount. So let me be clear, because I just don't remember. But let's say I have under 4 grams on me of marijuana here in Houston, Harris County, and I'm pulled over and they ask, I can literally drop. I can really release it. Somebody done reported my live. Well, I'll be damned. But I could release my marijuana and I would receive a ticket. But if I cross that county line and I'm somewhere else, I might be going to jail. So say I'm in Montgomery County, which is just north of Harris County, where Houston is, right? I'm probably going to county jail. In that same regard, that's how the state itself is working. What happens in one, oh, you show right. My bad, TikTok. I'm trying to teach. Oh, okay. The grass. Okay. I told y'all, I'm a scroller. I'm learning the rules. That's what we doing. We learning the rules. My bad, TikTok. I'll figure that out. I'll go in and do an appeal. Thank you. All right. Because in class, I use at the job, I use the legal terminology. Just like if I taught a sex ed class, I would use the actual anatomy, right? Because we have to learn things in its legitimate form. Otherwise, if it's written in a law, we don't know what it means because we've never heard it. We never heard it in practice. But I got it. I got it. Okay. And that's probably it, though. That's probably it. That makes so much sense. I apologize, TikTok. I know y'all listening, but y'all ain't listening. Well, whatever. Anyway, So in Texas is not legal. That's all I was trying to get to. In Texas is not legal. So Texas does not have to give full faith and credit to the laws of Colorado as it relates to those what you said to that Mary Jane. Okay. Okay. As it relates to that Mary Jane. I hope that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. As it relates to the Mary Jane, Texas does not have to give full faith and credit. So that's section 1. Section 2. Oh, well, let me not finish that section 1. And then it says, after full faith and credit, it says, and the Congress, listen to the word, and the Congress may, by general law, prescribe the manner in which such acts, records, and proceedings shall be proved and the effect thereof. What's the difference between may and shall? May is optional, shall is required. Okay. I got it. All right, next, section 2. The citizens of each state shall be entitled to all the privileges and immunities of citizens in the several states. Okay. Now, I think I gave y'all an example, but I'm not sure. A person charged in any state with treason, felony, or other crime, who shall flee from justice and be found in another state, shall on demand of the executive authority of the state from which he fled be delivered up to be removed to the state having jurisdiction of the crime. This is talking about extradition, so extraditing someone. I think I gave the example. If I did not, here it is. It's Sierra Sutton, capital C-I-E-R-R-A, Sierra with a C, I-E-R-A, not like the singer, Sierra with an E. Sierra with an E, a C and an E. Sutton, S-U-T-T-O-N, in the pew pew and chop chop of her boyfriend, Stephen Coleman. All right. Thank you, Jazz. All right. I want you to look that up. That is a Harris County, so it's local to the Houston metropolitan area, but it took place in a town called Baytown, which is just southeast of Houston. All right. Here in Harris County. That took place in 2017, just before the hurricane hit. All right. So when you look at that, you will see a very dramatic but very real example of that part of Article 4, Section 2 of Article 4. Another example of a more current event, much more current event, is Super Mario Brothers. Okay, in Altoona, who was in New York that went to Altoona. All right, because I think they lawyer you in the algorithm and use his name. Yes, Luigi. But that's another example of extradition. All right. So when someone is extradited, there's a suspect in a crime, and authorities have reason to believe that they're located in another place. They can and they should send notification to that other place and ask them, hey, if you see them, can you take them into custody, bring them to us, or hold them for us? And we will, yes, I know he went to Pennsylvania. That's why I said Altoona. They will hold them. So either take them into custody and hold them for us, or take them into custody and bring them to us, right? Because when someone is accused of what? Treason, felony, or other crime, and they flee from justice and be found in another state. And notice when you read the Constitution, state is not capitalized. State is not capitalized, right? State is lowercase. That's how we know it's referring to one of the 50. Now, if you ever see state capitalized, and it's not the first word in the sentence, that means they're talking about the federal government. Okay. If it's lowercase, it's just talking about other states. Same thing with the word court. If you see the court and the C is capitalized, they're talking about the Supreme Court. If you see the court decided yada yada and it's lowercase, they're talking about some other court, typically a district court. If it's a federal case, they're talking about a district court, or they're referring back to a district court or an appellate court. Okay. So that's just a little tidbit to help you read things properly in context. Okay. Oh, Lulu. I like that. I like that name, Lulu. Okay. That makes sense. All right. Yes. So uppercase and lowercase, the capitalization matters. And it's very apparent when once you know that and you start reading, you be like, oh, that's not what I thought it meant. That means that. All right. And I'm going to go back to something in a minute and we're going to address it. All right. So we understand extradition. All right. So you're like, well, Professor, you said you were still talking about congressional powers. Well, if we get to Section 3 of Article 4, because Section 4, again, is talking about the states. Jazz, you want me to repeat the C and the S? So if you see the word state, and it's just in a sentence, but not the first word in a sentence, and it's capitalized, it's referring to the federal government. Okay. If you see the word court capitalized and it says the court. So let's say a sentence starts off the court, but court is capitalized. It's talking about the Supreme Court. So when it's lowercase, it's talking about a state if it's an S, or a lower court if it's a C. But if it's capitalized, it's talking about the federal government or the Supreme Court. All right. If you're liking this, make sure you're liking, following, sharing, and make sure you go to YouTube and subscribe. All right. So Section 3, we're almost done. Okay. We're almost done with today's lecture. So class number 3 next Thursday, we'll be back on our Thursdays, is going to cover more congressional powers. We should be able to wrap it up, the overall lecture of Congress next week, but we'll always be talking about Congress because Congress plays such a huge role, but we're so distracted about 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, and not just because President Trump is our president. We're always distracted by 1600 because we've been convinced, and we're so polarized by thinking our power is in one person or one branch, when it is not. It is throughout the 3 branches. All right. So yes, even with the capitalization. All right. You'll also notice when you're reading this in general, when Congress is referred to, you will always see it, the Congress. And if I were a guessing woman, if I were a betting woman, right? Anytime you see Congress referred to, you see it as the capital C Congress. I would imagine the reason why the framers, remember those folks who went to Philadelphia and drafted this, the reason why they were so intentional with these capitalizations and lowercase is for future readers, because this is a living and breathing document. They wanted you to know. So as it relates to the Congress, I think they may have thought that when states formulated their own legislative branches, that they may adopt that same name for their states. So for example, perhaps they thought that you would have the Georgia Congress, the Congress of Georgia, instead of the Georgia legislature, or the Virginia Congress, or the Oklahoma Congress. And so in case there was any confusion later, they went on ahead and adopted throughout this document. When you see Congress referred to, it's always the and capital C. All right. And the is not always capitalized. The is not always capitalized. So Sparky, I'm not sure if you're just joining us, but the Senate is Congress. Congress is 2 chambers, House of Representatives and the Senate. Congress is 2 chambers. Okay. And so in the states, you have the same, generally in most states, you have the same names of the the two chambers in the state legislatures as you do in the federal legislature. So in the state of Texas, we have the state Senate made up of 31 people, and then we have the state House of Representatives made up 150 people, right? So we have 181 members of the Texas legislature. But let's say they use the word Congress instead. They don't, they use legislature. But I think the framers did that intentionally with that capitalization in case that were the case. All right. So there was no confusion of which Congress or which legislative body. It's very clear that they're talking about federal. Okay. Yep. So okay. Nebraska's unicameral and most are bicameral. Okay. So Sparky, when you watch the replay, I've explained that. But Crockett is a member of Congress as well as Elizabeth Warren. They're both members of Congress. But the problem is, I would say through sheer ignorance that has become popularized, we don't call people representative, and that's what we should call them. And I think someone probably started calling them, referring to them instead of as representative, as congressperson, to make themselves probably more elite. If I had to guess, I don't know that to be true or false. I'm just having an opinion, right? But their actual title is senator and representative. Yes, representative. Mm-hmm. So typically, though, if she's introduced, they may call her Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, and Jasmine's awesome. You know, I met her in law school. She's freaking phenomenal. She has always been super sharp, right? She went to TSU, Texas Southern University, the Thurgood Marshall School of Law. If you were to introduce her, if I were introducing her, I would say presenting the Honorable Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, representative for, and I would name her congressional district of Texas. All right. Same thing with my member of Congress, the Honorable Congressman Sylvester Turner, representative for the 18th Congressional District of Texas. All right. So hopefully that makes sense. Yep. So that's why you should just say rep. Now we have gotten through that. I did want to talk to you about Section 3, and I've gone over my time. So just give me 3 more minutes and I will give you till 1:03. Okay. Or 1:03 my time. So that's 2:03 your time. We've gone a long time today, huh? Okay. New states. Remember, Article 4 is about states. New states may be y'all save y'all questions once I finish the lecture. New states may be admitted by the Congress into this union. What's our union? Our nation. All right. That's why you had the Confederates versus the Union. It wasn't the North and the South. It was the country, the United States, and then this new group who had formulated the Confederacy, right? So we are a union. All right. Just for historical context, make sure y'all understand that. New states may be admitted by the Congress into this union, semicolon. But no new states shall be formed or erected within the jurisdiction of any other state, semicolon, nor any state be formed by the junction of 2 or more states or parts of states without the consent of the legislatures of the states concerned, as well as the Congress. This is another power of Congress, and this is where we're going to land. This is another power of Congress. Congress can and has the power to create new states. It must be through Congress. The states can agree that they want to do it, but unless Congress allows it, it can't happen. Okay? Everybody got that? All right, next. The Congress shall have power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory or other property belonging to the United States. So your national parks, when you're in DC and you're walking along the National Mall, or you're visiting the Lincoln Monument, or you're at Yellowstone Park, or what have you, those places, Congress has the power to dispose of them and make any needful rules and regulations. That is why some person who is a representative in Congress, a member of the House of Representatives, has proposed adding President Trump's head, I want to say, to Mount Rushmore. That's what someone emailed me the other day. I still haven't taken the time to look at it. But if it's true that someone proposed that, that is why they proposed it, because that's something that Congress would have to decide. See my emoji? Now, okay, someone said it is true. So that is proposed. But people propose all kind of ridiculous stuff, okay, that, really don't go anywhere. Now, another example of a territory controlled by Congress, Puerto Rico, Guam, right? The U.S. Virgin Islands, all right? Yes, so if Puerto Rico wanted to become a state, well, no, Puerto Rico doesn't have states' rights. They're not a state. Congress would have to do that, okay? Congress would have, because Congress is the only person with power over Puerto Rico. So Congress would have to do that. Now, if what's his name? Who owned the Dallas Cowboys? Jones. So if Jerry Jones wanted to create a state called Cowboy, and he wanted to carve out North, East Texas, South, East Oklahoma, Southwest Arkansas, and Northwest Louisiana, and call that Cowboy, all four of those states would have to agree, and then Congress would have to agree. All right? That makes sense? All right. All right. So that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes the lecture. Class is dismissed, but if you want to stay and ask questions, you have about 15 minutes, and I will answer questions before I stop the live. And hopefully y'all don't take the whole 15. So somebody asked a question while I was talking, and I told them to hold it, so I'm going to go back up to it. Walter, they're drawn up by people's own audacity. They're drawn up from people who are in their community who bring it to them. They're drawn up by lobbyists. They're drawn up by interest groups. I need y'all to watch anything that I tell y'all to watch. I'm telling you for a reason, so you can create your own rabbit hole. You need to watch Rigged. All right. You need to watch Rigged. I'm going to send that out in my next email. Again, let me apologize for not sending an email this week. It was just very busy. The intent was to do it Wednesday. I fell asleep. And then yesterday I was just busy. And when I came home, 15 minutes later, a transformer was hit over here, so the whole neighborhood was dark. But nevertheless, I'll put it in the next email. But Rigged, you need to watch that. If you've ever watched The 13th, right, the Ava DuVernay documentary, The 13th, I think it was released like in 2016, 2017. If you watch that documentary, you will see how interest groups, the role of interest groups, and that's something that we're going to talk about in here, not today, but later on, once we get through the actual Constitution itself, then we'll start delving in deeper into how these things are actually being applied, in our nation. All right. Let's see. So Puerto Rico does have representation in the Congress, but not voting representation. Question: full faith and credits regarding gay marriage. States does not have to marry same sex, but has to recognize them as marriage. No, states must. When the Supreme Court makes a decision, that is not limited to just where that lawsuit came from, that state that may have denied that marriage. It's applicable to all. So in 2015, the case was Oberfeld versus Hodges. I'm going to put it on here. versus Hodges. Then I'm gonna spell it for you all on TikTok. It's Obergefell versus Hodges, Hodges. Obergefell versus Hodges in 2015 was a Supreme Court decision that found that same-sex marriage, they deemed it to be legal, right? Because marriage itself is a fundamental right. It's like a human right. It's marriage itself. Okay, marriage. Don't y'all dealing with the bedroom. Let's get out of people's bedroom, because you could have a ma'am and a sir. You don't know what's going on in their bedroom or who going on in their bedroom. And that's our problem. We be so busy being in people's bedroom. But let's look at relationship, right? Let's look at the organic side of it. Wherever you stand on that spectrum, let's just look at marriage as this fundamental right, which the court had previously said in 1967 during Loving versus Virginia, another case, Loving versus Virginia. All right. Marriage itself is a fundamental right. People, is natural that people who desire love, attraction, familial bond. Ooh, I can't answer that. He don't have to park out front. Why are they trying to? Okay. Hold on. What was I saying? So the Supreme Court gave, put this back on the screen. Who was that? Where's that question? Okay. Fane, that was your question. So the Supreme Court gave that ruling in 2015. So the states that did not have same-sex marriage. So you had places like California, Maryland. So I'm gonna give you some context to that case. Obergefell versus Hodges, 2015. I think his name was Jim Obergefell. Obergefell and his partner had been together for like 20 plus years. So they were definitely in a very committed relationship. We know folks divorce, they get married and divorce tomorrow around these parts, right? But they had been committed. They've been in this committed relationship over 20 years. His partner, however, was sick. And so for legal purposes, marriage was best for them so that they could, marriage was most ideal for them so that they could do what they needed to do legally to protect the state, to make medical decisions and all of that. Because oftentimes medical decisions are left to a blood relative or a spouse. And legally, Obergefell was not his partner's legal partner. Okay. So I hope that makes sense for that part. Because of that, they flew to Maryland where same-sex marriage was legal. They got married on the tarmac. Okay. They got married on the tarmac, meaning basically on the plane or there at the airport. And then they returned back to their home state of Ohio and filed suit for them because they had to have standing. In order to have standing, you actually have to have a case. So their case was, you're refusing to recognize our marriage, which then violates the U.S. Constitution per two things: Article 4, full faith and credit, but most certainly under the 14th Amendment, which I've told y'all is the most litigated amendment of all of them. It's used in more lawsuits, right? And what part of the 14th Amendment would that be? It would be the right to due process as well as equal protection under the laws. Okay. Does that sound right? Okay. I mean, do you see that connection? Okay. So when the Supreme Court made that ruling saying that it was legal, then Ohio had to recognize it. I don't know if y'all remember, but I want to say it was Tennessee. It could have been Kentucky, but there was a county clerk. Remember, in counties, and we haven't talked about counties. I kind of talk at them, but we haven't gotten into that. That's another subject, another course. That will be our local government course. And that's going to be hard because we all live in different states, but I'm going to still give it an attempt. But clerks generally are the keepers of the records, right? They give the local licensing, and they are the keeper of the records for a county. So there was a county clerk in Tennessee who had refused to grant, after the Supreme Court decision, she refused to grant licensing. All right. I think it was Tennessee or Kentucky. Y'all can look it up. But that was a big deal. Okay. So, yes, every state must not just recognize same-sex marriage, every state must also grant them because of that Supreme Court decision in 2015. We can look, oh, thank you, it was Kentucky. And we can look at the same thing for interracial marriage with Loving versus Virginia. All right, with Loving versus Virginia, the court said it was a fundamental right. So we're going to talk about 3 cases. I just gave you 2 of them, but we're going to talk about 3 cases as related to marriage and what the Supreme Court has ruled regarding marriage. Historically speaking, the Supreme Court has been more favorable to marriage, whether it was interracial, whether it was same sex, or whether it was something else that we're going to talk about in the future, because I don't want to get into that right now. But the Supreme Court has historically ruled in favor of the couple that was either seeking marriage or that was already married. Okay. All right. I think that was a good way. Music lover, I'm about to ban you from my class because, baby, I mean, it just out the sky. Just random. Just like, what are you doing? Send me an email. Send me random. You got a random question, send it email. But let's stay on topic. Oh, I love y'all, but boy, oh Jesus, at least they pay me for it when I get them in class at work. I don't get paid for them here. Y'all ain't gonna be stressing me like that. All right. You okay? It's funny. That's why I'm laughing. It's just like, now come on. You see what we're talking about? All right. So, do territories follow federal laws? Yes, they are governed by the U.S. Constitution and whatever policies, procedures established for them by either the Constitution or through Congress. All right. All right. Child, please, Carlos. All right. Yeah, it was a real good question. I'm about to screenshot it so I can come back to it. All right. Faint Not. I want to shout Faint Not out. Faint Not really bought it today, both on TikTok and then transferred over to YouTube. I want to thank you. I think it's your first time here. I want to thank everybody for attending, for sharing your input, for helping out in the chat. This is a safe space. I do appreciate you all. If ever you feel like I'm being biased, call me out on it respectfully. But also, before you call me out on it, ask yourself, but why is she saying it? Be a 3-year-old and ask why, and then try to answer that why. And then I think you will come from out of the thought that I was being biased, and you will find what I'm trying to express and the why it exists, so that we can really engage in more depth. Okay, if I'm going to be biased, I'm going to establish it. I'm saying, well, I'm on my soapbox, so this is my opinion. Okay, but in general, I try to stay away from that because this is for educational purposes, not trying to convince you to make a decision or trying to persuade you. What I'm trying to do is empower you with knowledge. All right. So hopefully you've enjoyed today's class. Now let's talk about next week's class. We'll be back on schedule for Thursday. For our Thursday classes, they will take place at 11:30. That just works better for me. So they will take place at 11:20. The live will start 11:20 Eastern Standard Time. The live will start at 11:20, and then the class will start at 11:30. So just think of the bell ringing in school and you changing classes, so you got to walk across campus. That gives you 10 minutes to get here, get settled in, ask any little questions, make any jokes, and all of that. And so our lead time will always be Eastern Standard Time. So 11:20 Eastern Standard Time, which is 10:20 and 8:20, 10:20 Central, 8:20 Pacific. Okay. All right. Again, make sure you register. If you're not registered for this class, make sure you register for this class. You can do it through either my Instagram. Can someone put my Instagram in the chat? _ the pretty professor, or right here on TikTok. You can click my YouTube link, and in the description of my YouTube link, there is a form for you to register. So you can use Instagram or you can use YouTube. If you choose to go the YouTube route, make sure you subscribe. But when you register, make sure you include your email address. Okay. Make sure you spell it right. And if you got an underscore or something, make sure you put that in there, because I can't figure it out. I don't know your email. So just make sure it's accurate when you submit it. All right. Class will be on YouTube. That's why we stream live to both. That way the recording is there for you to go back and review. All right. So Pretty Petty Politics on YouTube and _ the pretty professor on Instagram. And if y'all want to send hearts, I need 8 more. I would really appreciate it. So next Thursday, we will be on Thursdays unless something happens. And then we will pivot. Okay. And I'm going to try to get back to doing a daily video. So I did one yesterday. Go back and watch it. It was for Black History Month. I hope you'll enjoy it. It was really good. It's about Abraham Lincoln Lewis, the first Black millionaire in Florida, but he was so much more than just the first Black millionaire. And the one prior to that was, I hadn't done one since the weekend, since I think last Friday. So I put one up the day before the day I fell asleep when I was making what I made. Oh, the Asian chicken wraps and cucumbers. So I showed you my food on that one. All right. All right. So I will respond to inbox questions that are, or messages that are what I deem safe, appropriate. So don't be sending me no wild shit, because I done got some wild inboxes, and baby, I will ignore you. I won't even block you. I'll just ignore you. So you know, yes, she read it and she's ignoring me because you stupid for asking me that foolishness. Those are the inappropriate ones. But if you send me something, you just have a question about the course or that stuff, then I will answer. Oh, Queen. Who was that asked me that? Queen B. Yes, I need to post that to Instagram. I'm going to post that when we finish. Yes, I will post that today, because that's next Sunday. All right. Baby, y'all got an A for being here. You're going to leave here better than you came. I promise you that. All right. I'm going to put it on there today. Somebody said it's not up there. What's not up there? What's not up there? Any questions on YouTube? I'm going to end at YouTube. Peace, YouTube.